Hello there, everyone. It's Peter and Ralph here, as usual. This edition of the podcast is going to be different to our normal podcasts. Obviously, normally we're talking about world events, business news, all that kind of stuff, but I just wanted to make this podcast because I do a lot of presentations to institutions and companies and things. And I did one last month, and this presentation was on commercial awareness. So I was talking about all the different trends and things in financial markets, and in the business world in general. And then I had a lot of people at the end asking me the same question or variants of it, which is, how do I choose the right career? Because one of the reasons why I think commercial awareness is very useful is because it makes you aware of what's going on in the business world. It helps you to understand trends, and it means that it can help you make informed choices about what career to actually pick. Now, the thing I suppose the thing is that generally speaking, you have you go through school, you do the exams, you do as well as you can, you try to get the grades. Then you maybe go to university. This is like a classic thing. You go to university, you get the best grade you can. Often people go to university not knowing what they want to do in their career, and they assume that just at some point in their university career, lightning will strike. They will suddenly understand what their meaning is in life and what career path they want to do. However, it doesn't happen for most people, I would suggest. And so there's a mad panic going towards the end of the degree where you think, what am I going to do with myself? And then what tends to happen, again, this is a real generalization, but I've been a headhunter. I've done a lot of stuff myself, and I've seen a lot of this. They will leave university, get a job with a place because they applied and it was the one that accepted them, or one of the ones that accepted them. They go and work there. They get used to it. It's okay. They get paid more, and then at some point they come to a realization that actually maybe this isn't the right thing for me. What do I do now? Because I don't want to go back to the beginning, because I'm going to have to get paid not very much and start all over again. I can't do that, all that kind of stuff. So I've seen that loads and loads and loads of times. So when someone asked me, they said, how do I choose my career? I said that the most important thing is you must, and it sounds easy, but you must know what your strengths and weaknesses are. You must understand what they are, because if you don't, no one else is going to help you, or no, they're going to try, but you are the world's leading expert on yourself. And so therefore, I think that you need to understand this. So I said basically different ways of understanding this. You need to maybe assess your life as a whole, much in the way that you do people do at work. There will be an appraisal, might be half yearly, might be yearly, and they just concentrate on what you've done at work. What have you achieved? What how have you done versus expectations, and what are the goals for next year? That's generally what happens. Now the problem is that most people, that's the only time they assess themselves, and at that point it's only in the world of work. But I do think that it is a good idea to try and do this on a relatively regular basis for your whole life, because everything fits into everything else. And if you only look at one aspect in detail, you may risk neglecting other parts, and become very imbalanced. So anyway, so one way of doing it, I said, is to take a look at your life, split it down into different, sort of categories, and then try and split it down, to really get to grips with what really drives you. Once you do that, you then do an assessment on what means a lot to you, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you're not good at but would like to get better at, what you're not good at but you hate, all those kinds of things. Then once you bring that together and then translate that into the kind of career and trying to make it, I mean, this sounds easy, but it's not. But to try to make all of those things that you like, you're good at, you want to do, and try to make sure that as many of those are in the career that you are choosing and are in the company that you are choosing. So I know that sounds obvious, right? I know that sounds obvious. However, in my experience as a headhunter, virtually no one does that. Virtually no one does that. And I think it's really important because, we're all working. By the way things are going, we all have to work until we're 90. And so the problem is that I want people to help people to go on the right career path. And because I think that if you can go on the right path, you stand more of a chance of being happy and fulfilled in your career. And if you see success, it breeds more, you feel more fulfilled, you feel happier, you want to go to work, you want to see those people, you want to get better, rather than I'm just turning up for the paycheck. So anyway, I know that's a bit of a long preamble, but we have the world's greatest living expert on assessing your life and how to go in the right direction. But he couldn't be here, so Ralph is here instead. But anyway, so now the thing is that Ralph, in addition to being an absolute genius and an amazing an amazing equity research analyst, he actually has then gone on to write a book about happiness, how to be happy, how to, like, actual concrete steps. This isn't some sort of weirdo, I don't know, I don't know, like drinking certain potions, like eating the right foods, not that kind of thing. This is practical stuff, right? Because we're all about practicality here. So anyway, after that incredibly long preamble, please, Ralph, enlighten us as to what we should be doing. Yeah, it's not like that.
Well, it is in fact not it's the
yes,
so to speak.
more.
Well, so yes,
More.
well, thanks a lot, Peter, for all that fantastic blurb
Yeah.
in the intro. So I have indeed written a book about this, and that is the reason why I've lined it up.
Yes.
I've written a book. I printed 20 copies, and nobody's bought them, so I put them.
That's a ringing endorsement, if ever I've heard.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
So cool. Anyway, joking aside, just for a moment. So I've written a book about this, but what is this? I mean, you've basically already outlined precisely what we are going to talk about today and what I have indeed written about in my book.
Mhm.
Two things which I'd like to draw out from your introduction. One, you said you need to know your strengths and weaknesses.
Mhm.
You need to know your personality. And the other thing which I loved in your introduction was that you said you are the greatest living expert on yourself.
Mm.
If I can only ever speak for myself, and I can tell you that if I am that, I wasn't that when I started out in life.
Mhm.
And I was certainly not that when I did my A-levels, when I was 18.
Mm.
And so I think I wrote the book as a guide of how to become the world's greatest living expert on yourself. That really is what I did. And to link it up with the strengths and weaknesses comment that you made, the first chapter of the book goes into precisely that. I don't call it strengths and weaknesses because if you think about it more generally, there are no strengths and weaknesses. There are no absolutes. There is only your personality. And you have certain traits in your personality, whatever they might be. In a certain context, these might show up as strength, and the same ones might show up as weaknesses in a different context. And so you need to sort of know what your personality is, and then you need to know what the context is in which these personality traits that you have are going to show up as strength and not as weaknesses. That's kind of the art. That's the game of life, if you want. And so I've written a book which is designed to allow the reader to have a sort of like a chat with a book, so to speak, in order to understand how this can be done, how these insights can be obtained, how you can maybe develop methods for yourself or follow the methods which I have outlined in the book in order to find out about yourself. What are your, well, now I say it, strengths and weaknesses, although I just said they don't really exist. So more generally, what are your traits of personality? What is your personality? How can you find out about it? When you have found out about it, how do you apply this? And my book is general. We're talking today about how to find out what the right career for you is. But that is, of course, not the only thing which is important for you in life to decide. And we all know what these things are, and they may sound daunting at times. Do I want to get married? Do I not want to get married? Who is the right partner for me? Do I want to have kids? Do I not want to have kids? Where do I want to live? What is the right career? Of course. All these questions kind of can be discussed or approached using that same knowledge. And I would claim, I mean, if I have any life philosophy at all, that would be the one thing which I would like to say. If you know your personality 100%, you would know the answers to all of these questions with absolute certainty.
Yeah.
Guess
I mean,
what?
that's, yeah.
Of course, you can't know yourself 100%, but that's kind of what the book is about. And I go through various chapters in which I single out various issues. So, for example, I talk about exactly that, how to find the right life partner. I talk about more general issues. How can you learn not to judge others? That may be sounding more esoteric, but it's quite important for you to develop the sort of gravitas in your personality which you need to go through life. And I go through all of these various things, but the first two chapters, the foundations for everything, are first of all, how to find out what personality you have. I call that know who you are. And the second one is how to apply that. And I call that know what you need. And these two things I'd like to maybe chat about today because they are directly relevant in the context of how to find the right career.
I mean, do you think that, I mean, I'm very much of the belief that actually you only really get to know people, but also yourself, if you put yourself in difficult situations or situations in which I mean, I hate to use this phrase, but outside your comfort zone, right? If you constantly do that, you get to know how you are going to react in more situations and therefore have informed confidence about how you might feel or react in certain set of circumstances. I mean, when I was when I was at school, I do remember I put myself through a lot of stuff. I mean, I did army cadets and things. I played piano, violin, taught myself how to play the harmonica.
Really?
I learnt Japanese. I did loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff. And I did find, and actually that's been something I've done.
I
I
never
guess
knew I never knew you were so accomplished.
Oh yeah, yeah. Who knew? Eh? Who knew? If I got a couple of cymbals strapped to my knees, I could have, done like a one-man band thing. But yeah. I mean, I've done. I do like to sort of do things outside of the job. I mean, again, judo, stand-up comedy,
Mm-hmm.
triathlons. I'm now, weightlifting and CrossFit and stuff because I think that it's important to test yourself, in a in a safe area, if you like, to see what you're able to do, because if you don't, you won't know. And
Mm-hmm.
the problem is that if you have an opportunity presents itself, you may not take either. A, you might not see it, right? And B, you might not take it because you can't see how that's going to benefit you, or you don't have the confidence to know whether you can see it through. And I think that the only way, I mean, I'm trying to say this to my own kids, to be honest. Actually, Noah's a bit young for this, but the other ones are, Finn is old enough for it. But I think you have to just give things a go,
Mm-hmm.
see how you react, and then you will know yourself better. But as I say, you actually also get to know other people better.
Yeah.
I've been in like up mountains and all sorts of things with people having, close to hypothermia, and even under those kinds of conditions, people being generous, like they are suffering and yet you're suffering more. So they're saying, hey, you have this coffee or whatever, whatever. You understand the generosity, how they are, all this kind of stuff. And the other thing as well, while I'm on the subject,
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that in a more normal environment, I've always felt that you can get a much better gauge of what a person is like, not necessarily by how they treat you, but how they treat other people. So, I mean, a classic case of this is if you go with someone to a restaurant, they're nice to you, but treat the staff like dirt. That is a massive red flag, and will be, I think, is another sign of what someone is really like. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're talking about this in the context of finding out who you are yourself,
Mm,
finding out your own personality,
mm,
then I think probably we all kind of have an idea about
mm,
what our broad personality traits are.
mm,
Uh, and I'm going to get to that next bit in a second. The next bit being, but we need to understand this consciously, and we
mm,
need to actually find a way to analyze them. But before
mm,
I get to that point, back to the original one, where I said that we all kind of know what type of person we are. And just to echo what you just said, you've been up mountains close to hypothermia. I know that you were a fantastic triathlon athlete, and
No,
well,
I tried.
you
I
were
wasn't very
really
good.
good.
I tried,
and
but yeah.
and all of this, and judo, very accomplished there. Now, as you were talking about this, I was thinking about myself in the context of maybe just physical activities for a
Mm,
moment. And just to give you an example of where I'm going with this is all in the context of knowing who you are. And actually, this example, which I'm about to give you, is not even the example I planned to talk about.
mm,
Um, so I've always been somebody who has been in sports more light-hearted.
mm,
I don't have a competitive streak. I want
mm,
to develop skills because I think it's cool to have skills and it's nice to see yourself progress, but
mm,
I don't have to be better than other people.
mm,
If I want to be better, it's just for myself, because it's a skill which I can learn. So I've always been into action sports, and
mm,
from a very early age, my mum had a motorcycle, and of
mm,
course I loved the motorcycle. So my mum was like, well, okay, you can have the motorcycle, but don't go wild on it. No, no, mom, it's cool. Absolutely. No, absolutely. Just wanting her to stop talking and let me get on with it. So on the motorcycle I went. Behind our house was a wood. Yeah, you can probably all see where this story is gonna go. So on the motorcycle I went into the wood, absolutely fantastic, brilliant, and there is a sort of the path in the wood where there was a little hill, and I was thinking, yeah, I'm gonna jump off there. This is gonna be wicked. And it was, but not in the way which I expected it to be, because I ended up on the forest floor and the bike ended up in a ditch.
Nice.
Yeah, this was particularly nice because my mum had certain uncompromising things to say about my conduct later when I
Yes.
had to tell her that unfortunately, well, I hadn't ruined her bike, but it looked a little bit different from what it looked like before
Nice.
I started this. Anyway, this is a light-hearted story, but it tells you guys something about myself immediately. And okay, I was too young at the time to realize, but had I taken that incident as a life lesson, it would have taught me something about myself as well. I may be a little bit reckless, I may like action sports, I like the adrenaline, and I'm a light-hearted guy who doesn't maybe think too much about the consequences of their actions when it comes to sports.
Mm.
And then later on, when I got more senior at school, I discovered that I like individual sports. I was very good at gymnastics.
Mm.
Just to reveal this between the two of you, because nobody else is listening, I was one of the top 3 people in my year at school.
Yeah.
I'm not bragging. This is important because we then moved from gymnastics to volleyball, and I was absolutely awful at volleyball. I couldn't get what I was supposed to do. So I went from number 3 in my year to there is no number to
Unclassified.
characterize my lack of skill. And the teacher, we had the same teacher. The teacher loved me when I was number 3. I was his guy. And when I was rubbish at volleyball, he just completely dropped me. Now, the reaction I had to that was to just basically say, I will simply not turn up to the volleyball classes anymore, and I didn't. And so this again teaches me a lot about myself. First thing, I don't like team sports. Not because I don't like teams, but just because it doesn't really work for me. I don't gel with teams. It's just not something I can do. But I was very good at gymnastics because that is something where I only had myself to govern. Important life lesson. It is important. Let's not say simply, "Oh, Ralph, yeah, but that's just one of these things. Doesn't mean you don't work well in teams." Well, it has turned out that that is the case, however. And it is something which is deeply embedded in my personality, and it showed up in that relatively innocuous circumstance at school in sports. Second lesson, how did I react to the teacher dropping me? I just basically have no diplomatic skills at all, apparently. I'm very short and I don't really suffer who I believe is a fool, not even if that person is in a position of authority over me. I just left and, well, I got a very poor mark, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is hopefully this is hopefully amusing to hear for you guys. But there is, of course, an important point here. And the important point is the method. Because the method I'd like to illustrate, which will teach you stuff about yourself, is what I like to call, in the book I call it experience mining. So you have certain experiences and you mine these experiences for nuggets of insight about yourself. But I could also basically call it something like grab the life lesson. Because in each of these situations, when I ride my mum's bike into the ditch, when I act in a stroppy way towards my teacher, when I discover that I don't like team sports. In each of these situations, I have a choice. I can either say, it's just one of these things, whatever, and I will have learned nothing from the experience. Or I could say, actually, why did I act towards my teacher in this way? It was a natural reaction. I couldn't have acted in any other way. I would have needed to restrain myself with conscious discipline not to act in this way. So the way to act in this stroppy manner was a natural way for me to act. Why did I do this? And then I need to think about this for a moment or for a longer time, and I will find something out. In my case, I don't accept authority unless it is earned and unless I trust the person in authority to wield it responsibly and in a way that is not just simply hierarchical, lording it over me, but to develop myself as a professional, to tie this to our topic here today. And if you do this, well, not every time something happens to you, but recurrently and make it a habit, then you will find that over time something congeals, if you like. You get a tapestry of insights. Some of them will be consistent. You act consistently in particular situations. And that is how you understand what your personality is. I hope that's not too theoretical sounding. It really does work. I promise you guys. This is something which I do, and it simply works by almost like by pausing when something happens to you and think about, why did I react in this way? What is the reason? Sometimes you learn something, and over time you learn what your personality is. And once you've learned what it is, then you can move on.
I mean, I think that this is also very much, it helps with by reflecting on these experiences that you have from time to time. And like you say, it doesn't have to be everything, but from time to time, I feel that it helps you with, again, this is another phrase that everyone bandies around, but emotional intelligence. It helps you, I think it helps you develop empathy, because if you can reflect constructively on what you've done, you can also reflect constructively on what other people are going through and how they may be reacting the way they do. Now, I mean, this is going in another direction now, but
Yeah.
I do think that reflection on events is important. People don't, especially when you're younger, you don't really take the time to do it. Maybe because you're not yet gardening, or you're not sitting quietly trying to avoid the kids or something, no, but I mean, I think that people don't really reflect so much, and I think that it is a good thing to do, because like you say, it helps you to understand what your motivations are, how you act the way you do, and gives you probably a better guide as to how you'll react in other situations that you may not have experienced before.
Yeah, and in particular, I mean, the goal of all of this stuff is, of course, to understand who you are. Your point on empathy is very important, but it is as you said yourself, a secondary point. And I don't want to be misunderstood. I mean, my book is perhaps an unusual self-help book. Normally, in self-help books, you are being taught how to react to others, be inspired, and all of this stuff. And this is all important stuff. But we're talking about ourselves here.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is important. It's a byproduct of what I'm talking about.
Mm.
I'm talking, and this is a bit hard hitting, I understand this, but this is an unadulterated exercise in finding out your personality, because you are the person who decides your fate in life and
Mm-hmm.
nobody else.
Mm.
That is not to say that you're, of course, not embedded in a nexus. You have a social network, you have advisors, your parents, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whoever it might be, and this is important. But in the end, when the chips are down, it is still you who need to decide about where you want to go in life.
Mm.
And you will be able to do this with more competence when you know yourself better, and with less competence when you do not really know yourself.
Mm.
And so how does that sort of inform a decision of what career to take? Because that's, of course, what we are now wanting to sort of understand. And so let me give you perhaps one other example. This is the example which I sort of thought about before we chatted. That's what I wanted to present. It just happened to me the other day, but it could have happened to me, of course, at the start of my life, in which it would have been informative. So I was at the supermarket. Let me pause here right there, because it kind of shows you there is no event too banal for you not to take an important life lesson from.
Mm-hmm.
If that's still a sentence in English. These things don't have to be anything particular. It doesn't have to be a meaningful chat with your father, for example, or your friend. No, it can be an event at the supermarket. So I was at the supermarket with my wife, and in some supermarkets, at the supermarket I go to, there are these sort of scanning devices which you can get, and then you can scan all the stuff you're buying yourself. You chuck it in the trolley, and then you get to the scanning out device, and
Mm-hmm.
you scan it in, you pay your money, and that's it, and off you go. Supposed to be quick and easy, and normally it is. But sometimes you get random checks for the supermarket to make sure that you're not, Divis kind of geezer, and
Mm.
you only scan half the goods and make off with most of the goods which you then didn't pay for.
Mm-hmm.
So we were trapped in this particular random check. Normally that's not an issue. Somebody comes and checks through the stuff, and then off you go. It's a bit inconvenient, but surely no more than that. In this particular case, however, I got annoyed with this pretty much immediately. And so I looked around and for somebody to help me with this. Nobody was around, so I waved somebody over, and the person said, "Oh yeah, this is a random check." Well, yeah, I know that. I was getting sort of prissy about this because it said random check. I don't need you to repeat this for me. I can read. And then the person said, "Well, you need to go over there and that will be checked for you." So I went over there, but over there was in fact nobody to check it.
Mm.
And so you can see how this built up, and I was getting quite annoyed, and I had something uncompromising to say to people. The check was done, everything was cool. I went off my way. As I was leaving, the checkout people, I heard them say to each other, "Geez, it must be the weather or something," because it was a hot day.
Mm.
And this is again the same situation. At this point, I had a choice. I could have said, whatever,
Mm.
it was the staff of the supermarket who didn't perform well. Or I could have asked myself, "Ralphie, what's going on? Why are you so annoyed with this? Why did you have sharp words? This was an innocuous situation. Nothing is riding on this." and think about it. And think about it I did. And two things came out of the thought process, which, by the way, didn't take long. I mean, it just took me the time it took me to actually take the shopping home, like 10 minutes or so. And two things came out of this. The first one was I was there with my wife, and my wife was felt poorly on the day. So I kind of felt as if I was thrust into a situation where I had to manage the situation for somebody else. I had to care for her health and make sure that the time spent at the supermarket was minimized so that we could go home and I could take care of her there. That's situation number one. And the second one is I didn't feel that the staff at the supermarket executed their professional care in a particularly efficient way because nobody was there to help me. And of course, the two are related. So the lesson, if that had happened early in my life, here is the lesson for this is how it informs what job to take or what job not to take. It kind of shows me that I'm not doing well in situations where I need to be, where I need to take responsibility for another person. So I really shouldn't be in a situation where I need to care for somebody. I really shouldn't be a nurse. I really shouldn't be a doctor. I shouldn't be a homemaker, maybe somebody who goes into organization. And this informs even wider decisions. I need to be careful with the type of responsibility that I take on. Maybe having kids would be too much of a responsibility for me to manage. Had this situation occurred very early in my life, it would have been just a question mark around it, doubtful. I mean, we need to sort of see how this develops, mark it up for experience, and mark it up for further observation required. And I don't want to sound as if I'm making too much of this. But there is that lesson which I took from this situation. In itself, that wouldn't be enough to know what job to take and what career to avoid. Of course not. But if situations of this nature repeat themselves, this tapestry, which I was talking about earlier, develops, and you get a sense of the sort of situations to avoid, the sort of job characteristics which you cannot handle. And so that's a negative sort of thing, negative in the sense that it informs you what not to do. It doesn't necessarily inform you what to do, but then there are other life lessons which you can take where you understand your personality. I may be more analytical than others, so that's the sort of thing which you which to seek out. So yeah, in general, that's just one example of an innocuous situation which did teach me something about myself. Tons and tons of these innocuous situations, if you make it a habit to think about them, will teach you a lot about yourself, and that's the foundation which you need to understand before you, not before, but which will help you to make the right life decisions, I believe.
I mean, I think the thing, what you need to do when you are, say, doing this self-assessment, as it were,
Yeah.
you need to write this down. You need to distill it into specific characteristics. I mean, I always think that if you can, when you're looking at yourself, I think, one of the ways I think about it is you look at, I think, okay, so I always look at it in terms of characteristics and skills. So for a career perspective, characteristics is all about how would your friends describe you? How would your work colleagues describe you? So, but not just in very short, succinct way. Then you then have to look at what skills do you have? What languages can you speak? What experiences have you had? That sort of thing. And then once you can, you've distilled it into that, then think about the different kinds of careers, but also from your point of view, I always think about trying to classify things in sort of three ways. So one is your characteristics, which is what I've just said. The second thing is your skills, which is your hard skills. So characteristics is basically your soft skills.
Mm-hmm.
Skills is your hard skills. But then values is very important to overlay values on all this, because you have to understand what is important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like working in a team? Do you prefer working on your own? Do you want to work within a big organization where you can just be a cog in a machine, keep your head down and learn? Or do you want to be thrown into the deep end and work in let's say, a smaller company where you're going to be more visible, but you're going to have to, sink or swim? Are you family oriented?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to travel? If you're family oriented, you probably don't really want to travel. So you need to sort of assess yourself into what is really important to you. And then once you have that, once you are armed with that, then you can go and you can look at the right kind of career. I mean, the example that I have used in the past is, for instance, is money important to you? If it is, don't work for a cat sanctuary, right? I mean, you might like cats, you might, enjoy, caring for them, and you want to help. You have that personality of wanting to help, right? But
Mm-hmm.
if
Yeah.
at the same time you really value money, it doesn't mean that's not a bad thing. It may be you may have been from a background where you didn't have any, and you want to have some, so there's that. But it might not be important to you. You might be born with a lot anyway, and it's not important to you. Or you might never have had it, but you're happy as you are, and that's all fine as well. But the thing is, you need to take all of these things into consideration before, in order to choose the right career path and the right company. Because, you could go into investment banking, let's say, because we've both been in it, right? But, there are definite nasty places to go. And there are definitely less nasty, or dare I say it, nice places to go, right?
Definitely.
But they're not all the same. This is the thing, a lot of people kind of assume, banking, investment bankers, they're all horrible. No, I would argue there's probably a higher percentage of horrible people in there, but than some other careers. But generally speaking, there's good people and bad people wherever you go. So, that is a case of doing your research on the company, do your research on the industry, but also the companies within that as well. And I think if you go through the exercises of really, first of all, as we say, getting to know yourself, and then thinking about the values that are important to you, which is, I guess, is what your needs, which is what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You will actually be inadvertently preparing for an interview, because
Yes,
when someone says,
that's right.
um, why do you think that you should work for us?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why should we employ you? Then you will say, well, because you've been through all this stuff. You say, well, look, I work well as an individual or as part of a team, which I can say, which everyone says, but I can say with confidence because this, and give loads of examples of that. And then, give loads of actual examples because you've thought of it. And then you can say why you like them. So that's the other question. Why should we employ you, and why are you interested in us?
Mhm.
You don't give the cookie cutter answer of, well, because you're a great company and
No,
I
no.
like greatness and all that kind of stuff, because no one listens to that. It's a case of, well, um I think that you do things in a different way. I've found, by doing research, I like the way that you approach things. The people that I've met in your company are very inclusive, and they're very supportive and positive. Whereas, actually, you should, by the way, this is a top tip. Don't downplay don't be negative about other people, by the way, just as
No.
generally speaking. But just say, look, just say, in comparison to other companies, I have found your employees to be super helpful, really, are keen to help. And I think that is an amazing approach. Obviously, you can't tell what a company's like until you actually work there, but you can do homework to find out, to do the best you can, to give yourself the best chance of getting into the right place.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
No,
sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just nodding furiously in agreement because I remembered the interview, the final interview, which I had before I was accepted as an employee of the company we both worked for.
Yeah.
So that was the final interview there. And it was just an amazing thing. I mean, everybody came. Partners filed in, senior salespeople, everybody was senior, like 15 people, I think, in the room, and they were all firing questions at me.
Mm.
And one of the the reason why I was able to answer these questions is exactly what you just said. I mean, I had at that stage understood exactly what I wanted, what career I wanted, and why I wanted that. And
Mm.
so that is why I was able to answer all these questions, well, obviously successfully because they employed me. But there was one in particular, and I do talk about this experience in the book. So, guys, there are lots and lots of anecdotes of the nature which Peter and I have both narrating here in the book, and they're all there to amuse you, but they're also there, importantly, mostly they're there because that is the sort of experience which I analyzed and from which I took all these various lessons that we are talking about here. So there was one scene in the interview where one of the partners asked me, Ralph, if your friends were here, would they what would they tell us about you? And I said, oh dear, you haven't seen my CV, have you? I'm German, I haven't got any friends. And the room absolutely imploded with laughter.
Mm.
I mean, everybody was really happy about this silly statement, and I think that's when the room turned.
Mm.
Um, why am I saying this in this context? I'm saying that because I had the confidence to say that in the final interview of a high profile firm with tons of partners and senior salesmen. And I had the confidence because I understood who I was, I understood my personality, and this is to your point of empathy, I understood the culture in that company already, even though I wasn't employed by them yet. I understood the culture of that company, and by extension, the culture of stockbroking in the city sufficiently well for me to know that that sort of statement, which I made naturally, was the right statement to make. It was the right kind of banter. And that I wouldn't have been able to do,
Deutsche Bank.
well, no, I mean, pick a number, 10
Yeah.
years previously.
Yeah.
10 years prior to that, I wasn't confident enough in my
Yeah.
personality. I hadn't understood my personality
Mm.
and sufficiently well. And yes, at Deutsche Bank, that particular
That wouldn't have gone down well, would
quip
it?
wouldn't have gone down so well, but then possibly I would have made a different kind of quip. But
Yeah.
let's not go there. So
Yeah.
So anyway, um, that's the point I'm trying to make. But allow me to make one other point. So the situation of the interview, which I have just narrated, was the end point of a journey during which I had understood my personality sufficiently well to gain employment in that particular career. But our question here today is, how do I pick the right career? So there was a period before then where I didn't know yet what career to
Mm.
pick. And the way I kind of narrowed that one down was to, so I got to the end of my years at business school. And then, of course, you had to, flurry of activity. You had to interview with absolutely everybody. And that is the time where you needed a career. And that's where it got down to brass tacks, so to speak. And I got to the end of it and I thought, oh, business school was a great deal of fun. But unfortunately, still don't really know what I want to do now. So who do I interview with? All these companies came on campus and were vying for, looking for people to join them. And I had no idea. So what I did was to sit down and do one of these kind of analytical things which I talk about in the book. And this one I call the sort of game of likes and dislike. All I did was to go through a mind of what did I like most in my business school course and what did I dislike most. By which I mean, when was I naturally at my most excited? Where did I actually enjoy doing what I was asked to do? Where did I enjoy doing the assignments rather than when did I think the assignments were a chore? Something that I had to hopefully pass with a good mark, but something where I didn't really quite know how to get a good mark because I didn't feel that I was quite up to the challenge. So what were these? And in my case, no prizes for guessing. It was the sort of analytical things which I liked most. This is going to be very boring when I say that I liked accountancy. Oh God. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, what was that? Sorry, I just dropped off there. So
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
I liked accountancy a lot, and I liked the next one is going to be even worse. I liked the financial mathematics a lot. I liked finance, corporate finance, and all this stuff. So anything where I could analyze something that I really liked. The bits where you had to be more empathetic, more qualitatively thinking, marketing, sales, didn't really quite agree with me. And that was already the answer. Once I understood that consciously, I knew what type of career I needed to look at. Nothing in marketing, nothing in sales, nothing in human resources, something with analysis. That was still quite general. So where can I do this? I can do this maybe in companies, but that didn't really work. For me, the next level away from companies is consultancy. But I didn't really want to do that either because that would have meant too much traveling, perhaps, which is one of your earlier points. And so I thought, well, actually, pure analysis is being an equity analyst. I'm paid to analyze and to derive recommendations from it. It's a commercial, but also an analytical activity. And that is when I knew that is probably, I still have to say probably, but with a good level of confidence that it was the right career. So that's probably where I would need to look. And then, of course, the rest is then relatively easy. You know who the players are, and you just hope that they give you an interview, and then you talk. And basically, that's it. So going back to this, how to find the right career? Yes, You need to understand what your personality is. That is fundamentally important, and we've discussed methods how to get to that. Second, you need to understand what intellectually tickles you the most, where your um, where your strength and where your weaknesses are. And once you understand that actively, consciously, then you can actually go after your career. Then you can line up the actual players with whom to interview, and that, I think, is the answer. That is how you find your career. One point on this to finish what I'm talking about at the moment. You may still make a mistake. You may still find that when you actually do the job, that the company culture isn't right for you, that it's not quite right. Doesn't matter. You can still correct it at that point. Almost nothing in life is irreversible. So all I'm saying is make a choice as an examined choice with as clear understanding as you are able to develop, then make the choice and then try to make it the right one. If you find that it doesn't work, that's not a failure. You've still made a decision from an examined point of view, and now you correct it. Now you make another decision because you've gained experience and you've gained insight. That's how it's done, I think.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, I think that's a very good, that's a very good place to stop for now. We are talking about doing other, podcasts on this kind of topic. And so all that needs to be said is that you can get happiness rules. There you go. So happiness rules. That is Ralph's. So Mark Hedwood is Ralph's nom de plume. That's great, isn't it? I love it.
It is a great one.
And you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on. You could get it on Kindle. You can get it on Apple Books. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
that's right.
you can.
So good. And so yes, so it's worth it. This kind of thing takes time. All right. This is not a easy fix all. This is something that will take you time to read and to digest and to think about. But in the long run, it will do you massive favors because it will give you more understanding of yourself, your motivations, and it will mean that you feel like you're working towards something rather than going through life and firefighting, which is fine
Yes.
if you're a firefighter, of course, but in fact necessary part of the job. But that aside, rather than being reacting to circumstances in which you find yourself,
Exactly.
you are making conscious choices. But anyway,
And in fact, if we do a few more podcasts of this nature, all these aspects are also discussed in the book. Reacting to circumstances, what is the right mindset, how to avoid a mindset that you are the victim of circumstance, how you can take action, how you are the agent, how to develop empathetic evaluation of other people, what to get from that, how does that benefit you, how to develop an ability not to judge others. That's interestingly important because it anchors you more. How to take advice. That to me is a hugely important thing, because you can of course always ask somebody, what should I do, what should I study, what's the right career, but you don't know what advice to heed, what advice not to take. That's an important thing. All of that's in the book, and all of that is important. You hinted at all of these various aspects. If we do further podcasts, we might actually be able to talk about these several other, often intangible, but nonetheless very important life skills in the future.
there you go. You've officially heard it for here. Anyway, thank you very much indeed, Ralph. As always, brilliant, brilliant stuff. And thank you, everyone, for either watching or listening to this. Hope you found this useful. Many
Cool.
thanks.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye.